leaving Akosua behind, of stepping into a new life without her, tugged at his heart. The woman he loved had turned cold and distant, and yet, he couldn't shake the hope that she might come to understand one day. The night before his departure, he stood in their bedroom, staring at the empty walls. Akosua had barely spoken to him since their argument, and the silence between them was suffocating. She had said she didn't need him, that she was fine on her own. But Kofi knew the truth. Deep down, Akosua had always been about appearances, about what others thought of her. She needed him, but her pride wouldn't allow her to admit it. As he loaded the last of his belongings into his truck, Akosua walked outside, her expression unreadable. She stood there for a moment, watching him, before finally speaking. "You really think this is going to fix things?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "You think moving to the city will change anything?" Kofi paused, feeling the sting of her words once again. "It's not just for me, Akosua. It's for us. I want to give you everything you've ever dreamed of. But I need you to believe in me, to see me for who I really am, not just some failure." Akosua's gaze softened, but there was still a hint of bitterness in her eyes. "You don't get it, do you? It's not about the money, Kofi. It's not about your job. It's about you, your worth. I don't need a man who can't give me the life I want. I need someone who can elevate me, not drag me down." Her words hit him like a slap. He had never felt more invisible, more small. She had always seen him as less than. And now, with the weight of her judgment pressing down on him, Kofi realized something he hadn't fully understood before. He had been trying to prove his worth to the wrong person. With a heavy heart, he climbed into his truck and drove away, leaving behind the woman he thought he could build a life with. The road ahead was uncertain, but the opportunity in the city was something he couldn't ignore. He had spent too long living in the shadows of Akosua's expectations, and it was time for him to step into his own light. Months passed, and Kofi's life in the city began to transform. He worked hard, learning new skills, impressing his new employers, and building a reputation for himself. The money came in, and soon, he was able to buy a small apartment in a decent neighborhood. He no longer had to struggle to make ends meet. The weight of poverty was slowly lifting from his shoulders. Meanwhile, back in Isopingo, Akosua's life was not as easy. Without Kofi by her side, she struggled to maintain the lavish lifestyle she had once dreamed of. Her attempts to keep up with appearances only drove her further into debt. The friends she had surrounded herself with began to distance themselves as well, as they saw her for what she truly was, a woman who could not stand on her own without the support of her husband. One evening, Akosua found herself sitting alone in her empty house, the silence almost deafening. She thought of Kofi, his quiet strength, his unwavering determination. She thought of the man he had been before she had crushed him with her words, the man who had tried so hard to make her happy. Had she made a mistake? Had she driven him away for nothing? The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Kofi had never been the problem. She had been. Her own insecurities, her hunger for validation, had clouded her judgment. She had treated him as nothing more than a servant, never once seeing the man he truly was. Months had passed since Kofi left, and Akosua's life had fallen into disarray. The lavish dinners and shopping sprees that had once been her escape from reality had turned into a distant memory. The friends she had spent so much time trying to impress were nowhere to be found. She had no one to blame but herself. One evening, after a long day of trying, and failing, to keep up appearances, Akosua sat alone in her living room, staring at the old family pictures on the wall. There they were, her and Kofi, smiling together at their wedding, the hope of a bright future shining in their eyes. She had loved him once. She remembered his gentle laugh, his endless patience, the way he would always try to lift her spirits, no matter how much she tore him down. But now, she was drowning in the consequences of her actions. The man she had once humiliated had found success, had rebuilt his life without her, and in doing so, had found peace. Kofi had sent her a message a few weeks ago, simply asking how she was doing. She had never responded. There was too much pride, too much shame. Akosua's phone buzzed. It was a notification. She hesitated for a moment before tapping on it, only to find a post from Nana, the businessman who had hired Kofi. The post showed Kofi, dressed sharply in a suit, standing beside a new luxury car and a sleek office building. The caption read, "It's been a year since we made the decision to give Kofi a chance, and now he's one of the top mechanics in the city. Hard work pays off." The word stung. Akosua stared at the post for what felt like hours. How had she been so blind? Kofi had become the man she had always wanted, the success she had always sought, but she had never given him the respect or the love he deserved. She had let her pride, her desire for status, blind her to the most important thing in her life, the man who had stood by her side through thick and thin. The shame she felt was overwhelming, but it wasn't just the humiliation of seeing Kofi thrive while she struggled. It was the knowledge that she had pushed him away, driven him to leave, all because of her own insecurities and foolishness. Kofi had proven that he didn't need her to succeed. He had made something of himself despite her cruelty, despite her dismissiveness. And now, Akosua had nothing but her own regrets. The following week, Akosua did something she never thought she would. She packed a small bag and drove to the city, to the address Kofi had sent her a long time ago. Her heart raced as she approached the building where Kofi now worked. She wasn't sure what she expected, but she knew she needed to see him. She needed to apologize, even if it was too late. When she arrived at the front desk, the receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "How can I help you?" "I'm looking for Kofi," Akosua said, her voice trembling. "I need to speak with him." The receptionist nodded and pointed down the hallway. "He's in his office. He's expecting you." Akosua's heart pounded as she walked down the corridor. She had no idea how he would react to her showing up after all this time. Would he be angry? Would he even want to see her? She had no answers, but she had to try. She knocked softly on the door and heard Kofi's voice from inside. "Come in." When Akosua stepped inside, Kofi looked up from his desk. His face was different now, more mature, more confident. The years of hardship had shaped him into someone entirely new, someone she didn't recognize. "Akosua," Kofi said, his voice steady but not without emotion. "I didn't expect to see you here." Akosua began, but her words caught in her throat. "I'm sorry, Kofi. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong. I never appreciated you, never saw you for who you truly are. I thought I needed someone to elevate me, to make me better, but I see now that I was wrong. You were always enough." Kofi's gaze softened, but there was no warmth in his eyes. He had moved on, and while he was not angry, he was no longer the man she had known. "You're right," Kofi replied quietly. "I've learned a lot in these past months. I've learned that I don't need anyone to validate me. I've worked hard for what I have, and I don't need your approval anymore. But I hope you find the peace you're looking for." Akosua felt a pang of regret in her chest. This wasn't the reunion she had envisioned. It wasn't the forgiveness she had hoped for. But she had come here to face her mistakes, and now she was seeing the painful truth: Kofi had grown beyond the person she had held him to be. Share your thoughts with us. What lesson did you take away from Kofi's story? Do you think pride always comes before a fall? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that make you think.